This episode of the Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, listen to up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, or give us something to discuss in our new post-credit scenes at the end of each episode, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture. Happy continued New Year, everybody. This is AJ just coming up at the start of the most disappointing films of 2019, part 4. My God, we really do talk for a long time with these episodes, don't we? Just to let you know that this is part 4, and if you want, you can go listen to part 1, 2, and 3, which came out the first 2 at the start or the middle of 2019, and part 3 was last week. So this is continuing that conversation. If you want to know what we're going to talk about and when we're going to talk about it, if you want to avoid spoilers, there are time codes in the show notes below. And a couple of times in this episode, we mentioned some videos that we've made over on the Cult Popture YouTube channel, and you can go and check them out. The links to them will also be in the show notes as well. But beyond that, please enjoy the rest of this episode, and I'll be back at the end with a little outro.
Okay, big release, Frozen 2.
We're up to Frozen 2 already.
Yeah.
Well,
there was like a month when nothing came out. Although there are films that came out in that time that we didn't know were coming out, and so we'll get to them later on. So we haven't forgotten Jojo Rabbit. But Frozen 2. What do we think? I thought it was fine. It was pretty good. Had a good time.
Yeah.
I only watched the first one for the first time a week before it came out.
Wow.
And you know what? A little bit late to the party. Frozen 1 is great. I missed all of the like. I didn't watch it when it was like, this is the greatest film of all time, and then there was the it's not even that good.
The parental
Moana's
backlash
better or whatever, and then so I actually watched Moana, Tangled, and Frozen all for the first time this year, and you know what? Frozen's the best one. Frozen's fucking real good.
Yeah.
Let It Go. What a good song.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I disagree.
Olaf, he's so funny.
Okay, that's enough. We're talking about Frozen 2 here, Richard.
Yeah. I like Moana better than Frozen. I think the songs in Moana are way better.
I like all of them more than Frozen 2, which isn't to say that I don't like Frozen 2. I think that Frozen 2 is perfectly fine, but I think it gets itself bogged down in complexity that's inappropriate for a kids' film, and it pulls the core cast apart for too much.
Such a sequel trope, yeah.
And so my biggest thing is that I feel like the big lesson that was learned at the end of Frozen was that Elsa realizes that she can't be isolated and alone and apart and everything. And then this movie proceeds to basically make all the action like it's necessary for Elsa to strike out on her own and follow this voice on her own and do everything on her own, even when Anna's constantly being like, don't go anywhere without me. And it's like, yeah, that's the lesson that you learned through the last film. And then the end of this film, she's like, okay, I'm going to leave you now after discovering again that you're like amazing in my family.
Yeah, it is like, it's aimless as well without having a villain. There's, because
the villainy is colonialism.
Yeah, the closest thing to a villain, to like a single villain, is their grandfather.
Yeah. History.
Yeah, history. The sins of the father. Yeah, but and also the other thing is that it feels like there's a lot of attempts to try and recreate the success of Let It Go. Like Into the Unknown's clearly, supposed to be.
It's a banger. I had that song in my head for 2 days. I freaking love it.
Thing.
Into the Unknown.
That's my favourite part of the movie is that little tune.
Yeah, that's great. The best part of the movie for me was Lost in the Woods. What a fucking good song. And I know you're conflicted about this, AJ, yeah.
I've got such problems with Lost in the Woods. Okay, so Lost in the Woods is fun. It is funny, undeniably funny. But do you know what it feels like it's from? An episode of Flight of the Conchords or Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
Yeah. Do you want to just quickly explain what song that is?
So it's the song that Christoph, is it Christoph, sings?
So, yeah.
Yeah. When because he wants to propose to Anna the whole movie, and then she goes on her adventure and leaves him, and he's real worried, and he sings a song that's basically about how he doesn't know what he's doing, and he's in love, but he's worried he's going to lose her, which is kind of a weak, side note, is a weak character arc to put him through, because it's one of those things that could just be solved by communication, which the characters are good at.
We need more strong male characters though, with agency.
And so the song's placement, its idea, its themes are perfectly appropriate for where it fits in the film, but it starts with them like pulling down a pine cone from a tree as if it's a microphone, and it's done like, what genre is it parodying?
It's like an 80s ballad,
and suddenly, like, because you know how shows like Flight of the Conchords and Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, they do a lot of style parodies.
Yeah,
they'll do like, this is the parody of, like, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend has a great one called Ping Pong Girl, which is a parody of early 2000s Simple Plan, Blink 182 kind of rock ballads, and it's real funny. But that's in a comedic TV show. This is a film.
It's a kids' movie, AJ. It's
no. Listen, let me finish.
This
Jeremy.
Is an AJ-ism.
I'm gonna let you finish.
The thing about Frozen, the thing I admire about it, but at the same time is where it probably falls flat, is that this movie takes its world and its fantasy very seriously, which is a cool idea that I don't think they quite pull off. And it's things like doing an 80s power ballad that kind of make me go, well, why should I take any of this seriously?
What a good song, eh?
Absolutely. It's funny, it's great in a vacuum. Put into a movie which has got all these wonderful world-building ideas, I think it didn't feel right. And I felt similar about the songs in Frozen 1, that they don't suit the world of the film a lot of the time.
But also, because Weezer do a cover of it over the credits. Like, they always get, like, a popular artist to do it.
Well, it's not Weezer. It's Panic at the Disco, isn't it?
They do Into the Unknown.
Oh, right. Of Lost in the Woods.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And fuck, man, what a
tune.
What a fucking tune. That's like... This, this is probably one of my favorite film of the year, just because of Lost in the Woods.
the thing that frustrates me, where the film really lost me, was when she gets to whatever the land is across the sea.
Into the unknown.
Yeah, she gets into the unknown. Yeah. And it goes into this very conceptual kind of like, she's in a cave. And
but
like,
is it a cave?
The voice
is it
her calling to her to realize that she's so alone. That's the thing. Her whole thing is like, I'm alone and I want to be connected, and I feel like I'm drawn out to and I need to find answers, and it's going to fulfill me or something like that. And for me, I was like, I really want this to be a connection moment. I want it to be a moment where she finds someone, all that sort of stuff. And she just goes there and she is in this black void, and she kind of just discovers that she's the power that she needs. And I'm like, that's such an empty, like, ultimately,
it's very vague as well,
it's
right?
so
like
vague because
it's very like we couldn't think of a good thematic and like external marriage here.
The most concrete thing that happens is she gets a new dress. Like in that moment where like she discovers that she's the fifth element, which is hilarious, by the way. And it's not a bandage dress. But the thing, like, the best thing that happens is that she finds out that it's her mother's song. Like, it's a song that her mother sang. But again, it's just a memory. Like, it's a memory that's locked in this cave because water has memory. Oh my gosh, can I just say that, like, just stating something 5 times in your movie before you need that to be paid off doesn't make it a fact. Like, and
it starts out, it's first introduced in like and Olaf says it, and it's a joke because it's like dumb things he's like shower thoughts he's having as they're going on their journey.
Yeah.
And I don't, if that is genuinely what your movie is saying, I don't think that's the way to introduce it. And also, what does water having memory mean? What is what is the real life application of that idea?
And I think that's exactly the problem with the whole movie. Like, what is the context for this thing that you've just put in front of us? Like it's very vague. You're just stating it as a fact, but we have no idea what it really means. Yeah. And that's kind of a lot of the stuff that happens. Like, for instance, the fact that Elsa she ends up being frozen in that cave when she sees the truth of what happened. And it's just like, why is she frozen? And then it's just like Anna somehow realizes that she needs to undo the evil that was done.
Or she'll get frozen too.
But she like somehow understands that Elsa is going to perish forever if she doesn't do this thing, and it's just like it's.
I think it's a sisterly bond. I believe that.
I'm
not a girl. I don't have
the
a
thing
sister.
The thing that also frustrates me is that she realizes that they need to destroy the dam, but I'm like, hey, you know what? You could actually just dismantle the dam and let the water out slowly over like 3 days, and it wouldn't like destroy the entire kingdom of Arendelle. You know, it was like, no, let's destroy it all at once.
I saw the trailer for this movie when it came out, and I was like, this looks fucking dope. Like, it reminded me of, like, Spyro, the dragon games. Like, just with the like, they go to, like, the autumn forest, and I really like the idea of, like, maybe they explore other seasons and people who have the powers of other seasons. Even though, you know, I just dismantled the elemental thing from Spider-Man Far From Home. I was welcoming it in Frozen 2, and as the best thing about...
It was like an hour ago.
Yeah, the best thing about this movie is its emphasis on world building, and the worst thing about this movie is that its world building isn't good enough or internally consistent enough.
Yeah, and like for instance, like the wind spirit is just the wind, but the fire spirit is this like super cute plush toy.
Yeah, available in all good toy stores. I did think one thing that was kind of cool about this movie is that it didn't do the easy sequel thing of giving. Well, okay. It didn't do the easy sequel thing of giving Elsa a love interest, but there was that big whole give Elsa a girlfriend in Frozen 2 thing. And I think they didn't not do it.
Well, I think it's very clear that at some stage in the writing process, Honey Marin was supposed to be her love interest. Because the thing is, she does end the movie moving in with like her people at least.
Yeah.
And I think that it would have made so much more sense if the voice was in some way linked to Honey Marin, like, you know, tying together the threads of like the past and history and her identity, and also like giving her someone, you know, like actually connecting her. And like this is what I was talking about. Like, I wanted connection for Elsa, because the whole point of these movies is that like connection and love is kind of greater than finding out you've got like unimaginable power. So yeah, I just thought it was interesting that was a chunk that was missing, and I feel like it was written in and then taken out.
Right. Interesting.
And also not doing something is starting to become just as bad as not doing it, I think.
Yeah. Fair enough. I mean, I think it was like, I don't know. I think she's still a powerful character for not having a love interest, regardless of the gender of the love interest. But they gave her a companion, I guess.
Yeah. But they removed her from her sister, which I think that bugged me, that they removed her from her sister by the end. Although she still goes back for charades.
Okay, so the funniest part of the film though, when Olaf is like when he's doing charades and he does the like real swinging his hips and like Elsa. I loved it. But
I also liked Samantha. I don't even know a Samantha.
Yeah, Olaf was great, man. As someone who was only very recently introduced to Olaf, what a character!
Have you guys seen this Olaf character? My goodness, are there toys of him? Does he have his own animated short film spin-off that played at the start of Coco?
Okay, next big release. This is on my top 10 for the year, anticipated and in my just end of year list. Knives Out.
Oh yeah.
Now you two both put this as your number one film of the year, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man.
I put it a little bit lower down. I was told that this film would be the second coming of Christ by AJ, and then I was like, this is real good.
I maintain it is the second coming of Christ.
To be honest, Richard, were you that much a fan of the first coming of Christ?
If you love Christ, you'll love this one.
Invite Knives Out into your heart, Richard.
Dude, Knives, I am enamored with this film.
You should do a video about it.
I'm currently in the process of editing a very technically complicated video about it, and it might be out by the time this podcast is out. It might not be. I am obsessed with this movie. Like, remember how and this is not necessarily talking about Knives Out, but the slate of movies as a whole. Remember how in the first part of the year, when we did our most disappointing of the year so far, how we talked about how Endgame felt like it was so good that it sucked all the fulfillment out of every other major film of the year, and how everything was a little bit disappointing except for Endgame? I no longer hold that belief. Like, the second half of this year gave us so much good stuff, and oh my god, I don't remember the last time I was as obsessed with a movie as Knives Out. Like I've listened to the director's commentary for it. I'm gonna read the script, which is online.
Buy all the toys.
I'm gonna buy all the knives. I love this movie.
Just double check
I
the
love
bottle.
this movie so much, and I cannot recommend it enough. And depending on how spoilery we want to go, will depend on how much I talk about it right now.
I mean, I think we should go full spoiler if we want to, but just please, if you have not seen Knives Out, do not listen to us talk about this before, because it's so important for the experience of the film to not know going in.
Yeah. All right. So should we get spoilery now? Ransom.
Okay. Best thing. Best thing about this film is that the whole second act is like a reverse whodunnit.
Oh, it's so good. I said
you
there
think
just,
you know
it's a
who did it,
howdunit.
and it stops becoming about finding out who it was, and all of a sudden, the true north of the film is the person who killed him, and you're rooting for her to not get found out, and it's so well handled, man. Oh my god, I loved it so much.
What was so good about this movie is that as I was watching it, I was like, you spend the first quarter of the movie being like, oh, who did it? And then it like just becomes very apparent immediately as soon as Marta starts talking that she did it.
She done it.
She done it. And then, like I just sat there in awe of going like, how cool is it that there's a who done it that's like completely flipped and you know who done it. And now you're trying to work out how they're going to figure out who done it. And then as the movie wore on, probably in the last third, I was like, okay, now we probably are going to find out some way in which she didn't do it.
Didn't done it.
But I was like, this is, I just spent the whole movie just loving Rian Johnson so much. And I was like,
yeah, man.
Original stories, man. Original stories done this well. I'm all about it. Like original
Rian
properties.
Johnson, so good, man. Yeah.
It was just so enjoyable.
Here's some things I really love about it. First of all, the cast, incredible.
Spoilers for
stellar.
AJ's movie about
Spectacular.
Knives Out.
Video,
sorry.
Your feature-length film about Knives Out.
I thought that like people on Reddit were like, who's the best character of the decade? And someone suggested Benoit Blanc, who's Daniel Craig's character, who's like a Kentucky-born private investigator, and he's the obvious choice of best character of the film. But Marta is such a wonderful, wholesome, nice person that like rewatching it, I just fell in love with Marta so much. She's such a wonderful person. So I really love that about it. I really love the movie is some of the best jokes I've seen all year. And my favorite joke in it is when they tell Chris Evans' character, when he finally shows up to find out that he already knows he's out of the will, and his father is like, this may be the best thing that could happen to you. And then, 10 minutes later, when they find out Marta's inherited everything and they're all yelling at her, and Ransom gives her a getaway and drives her away, and as he drives off, he yells at his dad, this could be the best thing that could happen to you. And Don Johnson, who plays the dad, just goes, what does he mean by that? So perfect.
My favorite.
It's so perfect.
My favorite joke in the film is when the bit for the trailer when Chris Evans is telling them all to eat shit, and then the camera like pulls away into another room, and you hear them all arguing, and Michael Shannon's like, "I won't be eating one iota of shit,"
which is an improvised line from Michael Shannon. Michael Shannon is the best actor in the film, I reckon. He's so funny in it, and he's Michael Shannon's amazing, dude.
What I love about this movie's so good because if you just want to enjoy it as a good movie, as like a fun time at the movies and a good whodunit and a well-crafted, extremely well-scripted, like just really tight film, and you can appreciate it on that level. But you can also, if you want to, you can delve into kind of like what the movie is saying about culture and all that sort of stuff. And like, man, it's just so strong. Like talking about this myth of, basically people who want to feel secure and safe because that's how their father has always provided, that kind of basis for them of wealth and security and all that sort of stuff. And they're all, other than Jamie Lee Curtis, they're all, they're all just sucking off the teat, but they all have this sense, and they want to think of themselves as these self-made people who are, exceptional on their very own. And that it doesn't mean anything about them that they are happy to sit in the success of someone else until it's taken away from them, and then they start like sort of, you see the artifice and just drop, and it's amazing. And what I love about it is that also politically it's very naked about like putting very specific political characters who are recognizable in the movie, and showing that regardless of which side of politics they go on, that there is this sort of like cancer that's spread among everyone, which is if you're in this entitled kind of mindset, that it's just as evil regardless of which side of the political spectrum you're on.
And that's what my video is about.
Oh, sorry, spoilers for AJ video again.
No, you didn't spoil my specific. Like there's a great scene in it where they're arguing about who, they're obviously arguing about Trump. They don't say his name. And Don Johnson invites Marta in as an immigrant to like give an example of how, look, some immigrants do it right and come here legally, even though her mother didn't. But they don't know that. And then while he's like goes back to the conversation, he hands her his dirty plate because in his mind she's a maid. And it's so fucking
just
clever
after saying, and
funny.
she's like one of the family.
Yeah. She's not the maid, and so it's such a wonderful job of showing the type of person who insists they're not like xenophobic, then doing something absent-mindedly that says way more about their character than their words could.
And to me, it's when I was sitting there watching it, I was like, this is absolutely the same sort of feeling that I got when I watched Get Out. Like it's kind of a spiritual sequel to the themes in Get Out of kind of like holding up a mirror to the US, but also to all kind of like countries that were colonized by Britain and white people, and just those attitudes of kind of like, I'm one of the good guys, like I can.
Yeah, I would have watched Knives Out 3 times if I could.
But it's that whole idea of like the hatred that they have. It's just like it's. I can think of myself as good as long as I'm not the kind of bad that I don't like, or the kind of bad that's over there that I can point to.
Which is everything in the world right now, Like that is what's happening in the world. It's excellent. It's so
Just
excellent.
like a Joker.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So, for more information on Knives Out, check out AJ's video, releasing sometime, maybe even already
on the Popture YouTube channel.
Okay, so next up, we've got what I wrote here as Jumanji 3, but it's now officially been called Jumanji: The Next Level, and also officially referred to as Jumanji 4, because Zathura is part of the canon. So there's a fun fact for you guys. Jumanji: The Next Level.
Thank
we
you.
all saw this, yeah?
Oh yeah.
What a fucking good time, eh?
Yeah, man.
What a fucking good time. All right. Next one.
Yeah, I don't know how much I have to say about this other than what I loved about the first Jumanji, and I said this last year.
By the first Jumanji, you mean Welcome to the Jungle?
Of Welcome to the Jungle, sorry. What I said about that is, the best thing about it is that it's essentially an acting exercise. It's a drama game where you take all these famous actors and see what it's like when they play against type to such an extreme.
Yeah.
And I love fish out of water character designs. This movie is that, but more. They do the mind-blowingly good idea of bringing recognizable character actors in it for the other characters to be playing, such as Danny DeVito and Danny Glover. And seeing The Rock do a Danny DeVito impression, my God.
Oh, and
it's
also Kevin Hart makes up for doing nothing in the first film.
I know, like
absolutely.
I have to say that actually Kevin Hart doing Danny Glover is so good. It's so spot on. And it was, I think, my most enjoyable performance, like sort of a performance of any of the main casts.
Yeah,
Awkwafina as Danny DeVito is great as well.
She's so good.
Awkwafina was a revelation in this movie. Man, she's been good in other stuff, but she was, and I think her Spencer was really underplayed, but it was really good.
A great Spencer, yeah.
Also, speaking of Awkwafina, a movie that I don't think any of us got a chance to see, but The Farewell, I do really want to see that, and Awkwafina is supposed to be incredible. She got Oscar buzz for it. But one thing about this movie is, and as AJ and I, two people that love sequels, this is a perfect sequel to Welcome to the Jungle. It's like, gives you more of what you wanted from the first film, takes, ups the stakes, takes it into new locations, and also gives you stuff you didn't know you wanted.
And I think the narrative structure of the game was better this time. I think the narrative that ran through the gameplay that
they going to deserts and frozen.
and the fact that they were actually chasing after a main bad, was really cool. And one thing I heard someone say is that because it's Jake Kasdan who's directing this, like Jake Kasdan wants to be making a kind of Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of Indiana Jones adventure. That's his sweet spot of genre. Yeah. And so he's taking essentially
video, something like Forgetting Sarah Marshall or The Muppets.
but like he doesn't necessarily want to make just a straight video game, so he turns it more into that kind of like family kind of adventure in that sort of epic vein, which I think is perfect, and it makes this movie rise above what it otherwise could be if it had a different director.
Yeah.
And it also expands upon, like, the best thing about the first Jumanji is that it's the whole the in avatars thing, and it expands upon that central idea.
Yeah.
In a way that because remember when we were talking about this coming out, one of the things we were saying is like it makes so much sense to just keep the Hollywood stars and change the kids playing as them, and it was so disappointing to find out that they'd brought the kids back, because it was like, what's the point in this? But seeing this, I'm like, oh my god, I was so wrong.
I'm pretty sure I'm
not a Hollywood screenwriter.
What they ended up doing, that you'd put Danny DeVito and Danny Glover in the game. Sorry, also I got Nicholas Stoller and Jake Kasdan confused. Jake Kasdan did Walk Hard.
Oh, right. Which you should know, man.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So like, I'm in like the sequel, that the third part of this quasi trilogy that it teases at the end. Now I need the kids to come back. Now I actually am quite invested in their stories, you know.
And the fact that they're doing what they did with the original Jumanji movie, like, that's
which I also watched for the
exciting.
first time a week before seeing this.
It's super exciting. I'm really looking forward to the third one.
Okay, so two movies that came out on the same day. Well, supposed to come out on the same day. Which one do we want to talk about first? Star Wars Episode 9. It's The Rise of Skywalker, or Cats?
Should we do Cats first?
All right, should we talk about the better one first? Let's go Cats. So, Cats. It's been... you've probably seen the reviews. This is an interesting film, and we're getting to the point in the podcast where we have to start speeding things up. So, Cats is one of those films that we obviously all... we know how we feel about it. We don't have too much to add to the conversation, so we'll sort of quickly run through.
I mean, it was enjoyable. Like, for me, it was such a cathartic release how bad it was. I mean, I don't know if you even want to, like, insert my rant about this from the most anticipated at the beginning of the year. Like, I mean, you know, the fact is you can't do a good movie of the Cats musical because the Cats musical is terrible. But I think what they failed to do is they failed to make a movie that is as enjoyably bad as the Cats musical is for some people. So like the biggest problem watching it for me, and where I feel like Tom Hooper was absolutely the wrong director to do this. Baz Luhrmann would have done an amazing terrible Cats movie, and it would have been like a camp favorite, and people would have gone to midnight screenings of it and stuff.
Although I still think that should happen with this one.
Yeah, I just think Tom Hooper is he's a play director. Like, he's a dramatic, he loves dramatic monologues. He loves, and his big thing that he started out with on Les Mis, God Save Us, was the big close up of someone singing and the close up on their face and cutting between like extreme or mid shots and extreme close ups. And the problem is this is a dance musical. It's not a musical where people are emoting or there's not big emotions on display.
Oh, but boy, there are some people swinging for the fences.
Yeah, they really try. But the whole joy of the Cats musical is the dance. And so the 1-2 punch of him doing crazy fast cuts between mid-shot and close-ups all the time is that you miss the overall kind of like the really good dancing that they got amazing choreographers on this.
Because the guy that did Hamilton.
And amazing choreographers, amazing dancers. And so you miss the formations, you miss all that stuff, and it goes by in an absolute whirl because the camera almost doesn't know where to look. And then you also remove the actual reality of the people dancing because they're all digitally altered. And so you get this weird kind of, I mean, everyone said this, but this weird kind of like floating, hovering above the ground, which the whole point, the thing about watching dance, if you like to watch ballet, is that, you know, you go there and you actually see these people really doing that in front of you. And it's incredible. The athleticism is amazing.
And that's why people go to see Cats, is because it's got these amazing sets and it's people who are
having a bunch of fun.
Yeah, and they're conjuring the idea of cats in your mind. They're embodying that kind of feeling. They're not actually, whereas this film, it's like, you just can't do that. And the story is non-existent, but that's a known issue with Cats, the musical. but the
Trying to-
songs aren't even that good.
Also,
Like,
trying to make McCavity the big bad that threads the whole way through the musical was a bad choice.
is that not a thing?
No,
Is
he's just
that
he's,
not in the? Oh my god! What the fuck is the play about? then?
no. McCavity's just a character that comes in. He just comes in for the McCavity song, and he's not like. He's kind of like the sort of McCavity. He's so cheeky bad. You know, like that's the kind of feeling you get.
I thought
Whereas-
the McCavity song was invented for the movie.
No. Taylor Swift's song "Beautiful Ghosts" was invented for the movie. The one that's like ties into memory, and then the version of it that's like the single is by Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
I think it's really fun and idiosyncratic that 2 movies came out this year that were live-action CGI hybrids of cat people, or cats, I guess, big cats, and they were both criticized for being creepy. But another fun addition to that is that I don't see a better way you could have done it. I just think it was doomed from the start.
I just
Both this
do
and
an
Lion King.
animated 2D animation.
Like, I don't know how better you would do either of these examples. The Lion King, it's like either you go all photorealistic or you're just making a cartoon. And with cats, it's like, yeah, if it's a live action film, then yeah, you just make it them actual cat people or you don't do it. I don't know another way to do these things. They're just doomed from the start.
Yeah, well, I mean, Cats the musical would work as a 2D animation, I think.
Well,
like Aristocats.
But who would go see it? That's the thing. Like, I mean,
It's just Aristocats, but with familiar songs.
the problem is fundamentally, like, it works as live theatre because it's live dance, and that's the reason people enjoy it. Is
Yeah.
because it's actual people singing and dancing, and there's a magic that happens when you have it happening in front of you. But the problem is with a film, it's a completely different medium, and you need a plot to actually make a film interesting all the way through. And so it's just never going to work in a transfer to film.
Yeah.
The one thing I hope doesn't happen out of this is that studios go, oh, people won't go see musicals, or it's impossible to do musicals.
Well, just the Wicked musical
it's
was
finally apparently happening.
No, it was delayed so they could do Cats. But apparently the rights holders of Wicked are real protective of nothing usurping ticket sales. So the Wicked movie will probably keep getting delayed until people stop going to see the musical because they're worried that people won't go to the musical because they can see the movie.
Yeah.
Whereas I think it would cause a renewed interest in the musical, if anything. One thing I love about this film is how some people are like, yeah, I'm in a movie about CGI cats. Fuck it, I'm going to have some fun. And then, like, Ian McKellen's a great example of his character works.
His best part of the film.
But Jennifer Hudson, boy, does she think she's getting a second Oscar when she was on set. And you can tell everyone would be like, oh my God, Jennifer, like, that performance. Oh my
like
gosh.
on the day, like
and
while
it's
they were filming.
so dramatic. And there's a bit where she's like, after the first kind of bit of memory, and then she like, I can't even remember if it's then, but she crawls away crying, and it's like, you look so fucking stupid. I cannot take you seriously. Yes, this is a beautiful performance, but you're a cat person.
It's like,
and you look ridiculous.
it's like how like when you're at drama school and like you're in an exercise and everyone in the room is taking the exercise really, really seriously, and everyone's like, oh, amazing work, because they kind of know the context that you were asked to do that in.
Yeah.
But if a regular audience member was watching like outside the door, they'd be like, what the fuck are those weirdos doing?
Yeah.
Like,
The strangest anomaly with Cats for me is that there are moments where it's like surreal universe and, you know, off-kilter, offbeat storytelling. Take a break for James Corden or Rebel Wilson to do a James Corden or Rebel Wilson bit. And in any other movie, I'd be like, this is ruining the movie. In Cats, it's like, like I can breathe again. Finally, something tangible I can
so you can hold
hang
on to. Yeah, but like James Corden's whole song about how much he loves being fat, and then he pauses it so he can make a joke about how he's real sensitive about his weight, which is clearly not in the script and is fucking terrible. Anyway,
Well,
this film was
when
baffling.
McCavity calls him a name and he's like, well, I actually like that nickname, so joke's on you. A very 2019 normal joke to be in the
which is a
weirdest
funny
movie
joke.
of the decade.
Okay, so around the same time we had Star Wars Episode 9, which we now know is called The Rise of Skywalker. So, this film. A lot of people were not happy about the fact that JoJo was back. I was cautiously optimistic. I didn't put it in my top 10 most anticipated films of the year. I was expecting, because The Force Awakens, I'll say it, it's my favourite Star Wars movie. The Last Jedi, I liked a lot of the ideas it presented. Not my favourite Star Wars movie. But I was like, you know what, I'm expecting a not too challenging, Big crowd-pleasing film. What I got was a film that made me very angry about. I'm not super attached to Star Wars as a franchise, but boy, this film is fucking trash, and it's actually one of those films that if you like this film, I do not know how to have a conversation with you about it. This film is bafflingly terrible. Right from the get-go, I was like,
what is happening?
How the fuck is this a film? And then just story beat after story beat, the film continues to lose me. And so I've mentioned in the past, we talked about on our most disappointing of 2017 podcast, I didn't like The Last Jedi. Not for a lot of the reasons that a lot of people don't like it. I'm happy with the story decisions it made. At the time, I thought that thinking a Star Wars movie was 3 out of 5 meant I didn't like it. It just means that it's a fine movie, and any other movie that scored that much for me, I'd be like, yeah, check it out. It's fine. This is what it feels like to hate a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
To hate a new Star Wars movie. Like, I came of age knowing that the prequels were bad. Except, well, I think. I saw the third one in the cinema. I didn't see the first two. And I was like, yeah, this is a good time. I think that might have been the first Star Wars movie I saw. But yeah, the Disney trilogy, as people are now pushing for it to be called rather than the sequel trilogy, nicely breaks up the other two trilogies for me. So like, my favorite Star Wars film was The Force Awakens, and then between The Force Awakens and Last Jedi, you have all of the original trilogy, whatever order they go in, and then Rise of Skywalker is my least favorite.
Whatever you guys think, that's correct.
My least favorite, Rise of Skywalker is my least favorite Star Wars movie, and then the prequel trilogy goes in between Last Jedi and.
Wow, that's really neat and tidy. Then
it is.
Yeah, that's like you said.
And then also, if you want to, because people keep going, oh, what about Rogue One and blah blah blah. Rogue One and Solo go either side of Last Jedi.
Yeah.
So I've got a very symmetrical Star Wars ranking now. Yeah, I cannot believe how fucking terrible this movie is. It's actually
laughable.
Unbelievably bad. I cannot believe it. I am in disbelief.
Laughable. Like people literally laughed.
I cannot believe it. Yeah.
People literally laughed in the film.
People made no noise in our screening. I went to this with AJ. We went to a sold out midnight screening.
Wow.
There was not a single
first
applause.
in the world.
Yeah.
First midnight screening in the world.
So this isn't people going into any kind of preconceived notion. This was not a single peep was made throughout the entire film, and like the credits rolled. The credits rolled at a sold out screening of a midnight screening of the new Star Wars, the last Star Wars movie, and no one clapped.
Wow.
Like, yeah, it's a real white people thing to do, to clap at movies, and maybe you don't think people should clap at movies, but you expect it. Like, people cheered at a midnight screening of Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, one of the worst movies I'd ever seen up until Rise of Skywalker. This is my most disappointing film of the year. This is a film that I was
easily
mildly anticipating to be fine. And
to be a workman-like finish, trying to pull together the threads of the first and the second, because the first and the second were not talking to each other, and I thought that at best we were going to get a somewhat satisfying,
amicable
workman-like. Like J.J. Abrams is really good at coming in usually and making the disparate things that have happened in like the previous properties that he's working with come together somehow and still feel kind of heartwarming. This was just poorly made in every way.
And there's so many moments in this film that are so Endgame, for example, is filled with these like fan service moments where you cheer, and like I've been to plenty of midnight screenings or like opening nights, and people are like cheering, and these fan servicey moments that are super cheesy, but the fans love them. Rise of Skywalker is filled to the brim with things like this, and not a single peep at any of them. And because no one else around you is reacting to them, they become so transparent and just like, oh yeah, of course.
Yeah,
like
there's no swell. I mean, I had a So out of the two of you, sorry, AJ, I know we haven't heard anything from you yet, and I'm waiting for the bile.
I'm JJ's mystery box, dude. It's all good.
I'm waiting for the bile to pour forth. But like, I do just want to like put in like a little plug for people who did enjoy this movie, and I know that there are many of them out there. And the thing is that a lot of the people who enjoyed this movie have kind of like, it's all been kind of branded with like, oh, it's just sort of the cucks who hated The Last Jedi, and they love the fact that this movie erases The Last Jedi. Like, I know. Like, I went to this movie with my dad, and he has not engaged at all with the internet about
He's
Star
not
Wars.
at all a cuck.
He has no idea like why people didn't like The Last Jedi or whatever. He doesn't read anything about movies, and so he loved. He didn't mind it. Right. He didn't think it was really great. Yeah. But he loved The Rise of Skywalker, and he just thought it was just he's like, it's good fun, it's good popcorn movie. He didn't think too deeply about it. He just sort of enjoyed the things that happened. He wasn't like investigating the plot or the movie. And he was like, oh, and he cried at the like all the bits like where like all the original cast came back. He like
and
cried.
when Rey's like, I am Iron Man.
Because obviously my dad,
when Lando's like, on your left.
Dad was part of the original 1977. Like he saw the films when they first came out in the theaters. He was a young man. Like, so for him, like seeing the original members of the three in the original trilogy, it was really important for him. And he was like, and so I get that way of viewing this movie. But man, if you want a decently made movie, this is absolutely not. And like, I honestly think that Kathleen Kennedy can't keep her job after this. Like, for her to have
it might not actually be her fault. Just a quick.
I'm sorry, but she is the architect of putting J.J. Abrams in charge of one movie, putting someone else in charge of the other movie, and then planning to have someone else in charge of and apparently not having anyone in the role of Kevin Feige, or however you say his last name. There was no master plan of this universe, of this trilogy, to say, this is the story, these are the beats that we're going to hit by the end of the third film. This is where it's all driving to.
Is the biggest issue.
But the thing is that this was my problem with Last Jedi. This is why I did not like Last Jedi. It's because they were doing the classic Lost thing. I mean, this is why, like to go all the way back to Lost, but when I watched the first season of Lost, I was like, this is amazing, I love this. And then after the first season and before the second season, I saw an interview with J.J. Abrams, or Damien Lindelof.
Where J.J. Abrams said, I had nothing to do with Lost other than the pilot. Stop asking me about it.
No, but it's the same problem is that, I remember it was Damien Lindelof then.
It would have been Lindelof,
yeah. They said, oh man, we're so excited. The person who's interviewing him says, we're so excited to see what's going to happen with all of these things, like the smoke monster and the polar bears and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, yeah, we're really excited to figure out what they are too. We wrote them and we don't really know where they're going, but now we have the task of going to figure out what these things mean. And I'm like, no, sorry, I'm not going to continue watching this if you, as the architect of this creatively, have not put these sort of like mystery boxes or these, these red herrings or whatever they are into the story, these important kind of ideas, and you put them in and you don't know what they mean. Then fundamentally, they don't mean anything, and I'm not interested in finding out what. And so it became very apparent that with this kind of almost like telegraph kind of way of making a trilogy, they're having one director come in, one writer come in and make one, then another one come in and make the second one. You're never going to get a satisfying trilogy, and this is the problem. And The Rise of Skywalker just shows how empty that way of making filmmaking is.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think you have to plan everything. I think that there are examples of things that have been made up as they go along that work. But something like Star Wars, you want...
Well, it's an epic.
You want some kind of vision.
Epics have to have a certain type of story arc and story structure. You can subvert some of the rules of them, and that's exciting. But if you subvert them just for the sake of subverting and you don't actually know what you were going to do originally, then that's not subversion. That's just finding a path that makes no sense.
Now, let's all hear. He's the reason you tuned into this podcast. Alexander Jones, what do you think of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker?
All right. So, for those unfamiliar with, for those who only listen to the podcast and maybe don't remember, if you watch our videos on the Popture YouTube channel, this may be a bit more clear, but if you haven't, immediately invalidating my opinion for some listeners up top, I'm sure, The Last Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie. It might be one of my favorite movies. I over the last couple of months, because we made a video about it, I have just fallen more and more in love with this film. Knives Out only fueled the fire that was my love for Rian Johnson. I love The Last Jedi a lot. And one of the things I loved about it, in fact, the main thing I loved about it was how it subverted expectations and how Snoke died and how Rey wasn't anyone important. And it was, I did see it as communicating with the Force Awakens, because I didn't see it as throwing everything out the Force Awakens set up. The Last Jedi would not be as good as it is, in my opinion, without the Force Awakens lulling you into the sense of familiarity, only for the sequel to be like, hey, but what if we tried something different? What if we took the series to a place that we've never seen it before?
Yeah.
So that's my context for this following rant. Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker starts. Within 5 minutes, you find out that so you find out the origins of Snoke, that the Emperor created him. You find out
He was a
knew the
clone!
Emperor was back. And then you
And if
find
you've been
out
playing
that
Fortnite, you get to hear the message.
then you find out that Rey is someone important to the Emperor. So obviously, you find out in the first scene that she's his granddaughter. Like, what other fucking conclusion are you going to draw but that one? But because these happen in the first scene, my initial reaction as someone who lives and dies by the story decisions of The Last Jedi, my first reaction was like, it's the start of the movie. I can't write this off yet. I cannot sit here for the next 2.5 hours and be in a bad mood because it immediately undid everything I loved.
See, whereas I did. I was in a bad mood.
So immediately I kind of shook it off and was like, well, maybe they can do this fine. Maybe it'll be fine. And so I spent the whole movie, whenever something weird or, bad would happen, I wouldn't interpret it as bad. And because the critical reception had not been, I was unaware of it at that point. Apparently it was on Rotten Tomatoes, but I hadn't looked. Because of all of that, I did not know whether this was, lauded or lamented, And so everything bad that happened, my reaction was, that's an interesting story decision. I don't quite understand it. I'll ask someone about it later. I spent the whole movie thinking everyone's going to love this movie, so I'd better love it too. And so I did not react negatively to anything in the film, except for the fact that Finn tells Rey that he wants to tell her something, and it gets brought up a few times, and then it's never told to us what it is he wanted to tell her. And so as the credits rolled, the first thing I said was, so what did Finn want to tell Rey? And I said it with such negativity that internally I was like, yo, you came in hot with like a negative opinion. You'd best be careful. Are you being too negative? And I turned to Richard, and Richard says to me, was it just me? Or was that really bad?
Unbelievably bad.
Unbelievably bad. And then over the next 5 minutes...
Do you remember what you said, AJ?
I'll get to that in a second. I essentially had the realization of, oh my God, it was. So it wasn't until about 5 minutes after the film that I realized how much I hated it. Because when we're walking down the stairs and I was like, I think I liked it more than The Force Awakens. And now looking back, I'm like, well, no, I clearly didn't. It was more, what it was that I care about these characters and I care about the story. And that was enough to dope me into tolerating everything this movie did for its entire duration before I then realized how damaging this movie is and how bad it is and how despicable and just simply unprofessional it is to have undone everything, and it leaves you with a lack of cohesion. It leaves you with just a jaw-droppingly poorly planned out script. And look, I'm after the supposed behind the scenes leaks, which may or may not be true, and I don't think they are true. I think I'm falling on the this is bullshit side. I'm cautious though to blame JJ or blame Kathleen Kennedy or blame someone specific. Whoever made these decisions are insanely bad, and I think while I understand disagree with your guys' criticisms of the storyline going through the first two films, I do think if you had hired someone else who didn't have a stake in what they wanted to happen, like JJ, I think a different creative mind, a different filmmaker could have landed this ship.
Yeah, Colin Trevorrow.
Colin Trevorrow would have been a better choice than J.J. Abrams in
Yeah.
retrospect. Unless the stuff that people are saying about Disney is true, that he was completely like manhandled by Disney.
But yeah, for a kind of concise summary of all of our thoughts, AJ's video on this is very good.
I just want to name check two things.
Yeah.
That people talk about, like, you know, oh, you either have to, like, if you don't like this movie, it's because you loved Last Jedi, or because you think that, you know, all this sort of stuff. There is just bad filmmaking that has to be called out. So, like, Knights of Ren being a rip-off Nazgul that, like, wield medieval weapons for some reason. Like, what the hell are they doing in this movie? Honestly. The other one is the placement of that ship in the middle, like a 5-minute like speeder journey through tunnels from this major like festival city. This ship that is apparently sat there for like over 20 years in perfect working order, that no one on this planet has like gone and stripped it for parts or checked to see if it's working and like flown it off. Like, there is absolutely no way that ship would have been sitting high atop this rocky outcropping for everyone to see. I just when that happened, I was
honestly,
like, I'm off this movie.
I could talk about this movie for fucking hours, and we did after the fucking screening. But
sorry.
Shout out to Zachariah McIntyre if you're listening.
This movie's going down in history. This is going down in history as one of the most bafflingly bad pieces of Hollywood cinema that has ever happened.
Yeah, but I do. But I hate that this, and like we spoke about it, I think with Godzilla King of the Monsters, is that like there's this, oh, you didn't get it, it's supposed to just be fun and all this stuff. It's like, no, this is actually, these are offensively bad movies. You deserve better than this. You deserve better than Godzilla King of the Monsters. And so you don't be afraid to ask for your blockbusters to be good. But
there's also a difference between what we're criticizing and what like Last Jedi MRA deniers did, where they attacked Kelly Marie Tran. I'm specifically going out of my way to not attack individual people, and even the ones I'm most potentially angry at, like J.J. Abrams, I'm open to the idea that it maybe wasn't their fault, and that's important because you don't know what happened.
Okay, so Little Women, this has only just come out in New Zealand. I went to go see it last night, and you know what? It was the first time in my entire life that I've walked out of a movie during it.
What?
So 45 minutes.
Was it because it's about women?
45 minutes into actually, I left because I had to take care of a woman. Not that she needs me to take care of her.
Was it because all the women were actually regular sized, and you were like, these aren't Little Women at all?
No, so 45 minutes
you
into
don't know
this,
how wrong you are, Jeremy, but I'll get to that after.
45 minutes into this movie, Jess, my girlfriend who I was with back one of my life, was very sick, and we had to leave. And I was pretty disappointed about it. I do want to see the rest of the movie. So, AJ, what is your non-spoiler, not at all spoiling a single thing about the plot?
The reason it's called Little Woman, Jeremy, is because Florence Pugh is 23 years old and plays a 14-year-old for a lot of people. No, but that's I don't even know if I'd call that a problem with it. If it is, that is my only problem with it. This movie is fucking gorgeous. This is amazing. I loved Little Woman. It's for the first 20 to 30 minutes, I was like, this isn't really hitting, they're not really resonating with me that much. I've been kind of into the idea of the resurgence of period pieces being made for people who aren't just my mum. You've got this,
Emma coming out soon.
Emma coming out, The Favourite, I would say, applies to this as well.
True.
But for the first 20 minutes, I was like, this kind of is just the type of movie my mum would like, and not me. But then it just gets so complex. And emotional. Some of the characters and their decisions and their feelings in this are so wonderfully warm and human and relatable. When watching it, there's a scene in it, I won't say anything more than there's a scene in it, where there are going to be gift sets on Tumblr of this scene with the dialogue under it, because it articulates a feeling you don't really see in movies. It kind of feels like this is going to be the 2020s 10 Things I Hate About You kind of thing, in my opinion.
Okay, so
occupy the same space as 10 Things I Hate About You.
Nice. Okay, so a couple of films that didn't end up coming out. Super Intelligence, that one with Melissa McCarthy, directed by her husband, with James Corden voices the microwave. That's now going straight to HBO Max, so keep an eye out for that.
Now I have to get HBO Max.
Call of the Wild, Christmas in the Wild, which related renamed got Holiday in the Wild. We've talked about that, so we don't need to talk about that. Six Underground, Michael Bay's new film on Netflix, starring starring Ryan Reynolds, written by the guys that wrote Deadpool. I watched it. It's real bad. It's weirdly bad as well for a film starring Ryan Reynolds and written by Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick. It's not fun. It's a classic convoluted Michael Bay. Oh, just turn your brain off kind of movie. But it's like, no, turn the movie off.
More like turn the movie off.
But yeah, no, it's the plot is so convoluted, and it's just not very interesting. On Netflix as well this year, we had The King, which is one that I quite wanted to see. It's a Shakespeare adaptation.
I tried to start watching it 3 times.
Yeah, it got bad reviews. So
I'm never in the mood for it. I'm never in the mood for it.
There was The Laundromat as well, which is Steven Soderbergh's film about the Panama Papers. I watched it. It's real weirdly bad.
Yeah,
like,
my wife watched it over 6 different watchings.
It's fucking weird. It's a fucking weird movie.
And after the scene with Meryl Streep in the Las Vegas apartment, look, I just was like, I don't want to. I just don't care.
It's a real weird movie, and Meryl Streep does not like blackface, but like Spanish face,
which is mind-boggling that someone as outspoken as Meryl Streep would do that.
Yeah. There's the movie The Last Thing He Wanted as well, which is about the 1984 presidential election, which I am looking forward to. That premieres this month at Sundance. It hasn't come out yet. But the big 2 big releases from Netflix this year obviously are The Irishman and Marriage Story. The somber story about divorce and the cool mob film, one of which stars Ray Liotta. So The Irishman, what do we think? We've all watched the whole thing. Yeah. So AJ and I managed to see this in the cinema, not together,
which I'm jealous of.
Oh fuck, I'm so glad I saw it in the cinema. Holy shit.
Why would you watch this if not in the cinema? It's so hard to get through otherwise. Not that it's bad.
It is very long.
Yeah, I kind of watched it as a mini-series because
which I think is probably the way to watch it.
At the moment, I am basically watching movies like I'm staying up with my daughter until she chooses to go to sleep between the hours of basically 10 or 11:30. So I have this sort of window between like 9 o'clock and 10:30 that I can like watch whatever I want in. And so I watched The Irishman over 3 nights, and I think honestly that's
the way to watch it.
It's definitely a 3-part miniseries.
Yeah, it is long, and you do feel the length, I would say, but it's very well crafted, and the last half hour is probably the best half hour of cinema I've seen all year.
Yeah,
and I'm so glad this movie exists. I'm so glad that Joe Pesci came out of retirement to do it because he's fucking incredible in this movie. And you can say what you will about the de-aging, about I think it works.
About how it impacts the physical performances of the young men and stuff like that.
But it's I'm glad
I'll tackle de-aging, don't worry.
That Scorsese, De Niro, Pesci, Pacino all made this film at this point in their lives because they are it's a very regretful and retrospective kind of movie, and you need Goodfellas and Casino to exist for this movie to exist. And it's like, if those are...
It's the next generation.
Yeah, if those are the big parties and the weddings, this is the funeral.
Yeah.
And it's the death of that. And if this was the last film Scorsese ever made, what a fucking legacy to leave behind.
Yeah.
So, yes to most of that. The last scene, breathtaking.
Yeah.
But I found this movie very hard to connect with, mainly because as soon as Jimmy Hoffa, Al Pacino's character, is introduced, for the next hour and a half, I had no idea what the movie was about. I was not able to follow it. I'm in a cinema, so I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not distracted by anything. I just didn't understand what I didn't understand what a full-length feature film length was in this movie. You know what I mean? There is a 90-minute a segment in this film where I could not follow it and I did not understand what it was about. And that's because I'm real fucking dumb. But I enjoyed...
I think it really helped that
you and I are quite intelligent.
But it just Richard, you agreed with me. You didn't understand it either.
I know the history. I know the history, the real life history of Jimmy Hoffa, and I know with the unions and the Teamsters and all the tension that was going on that. I was aware of that history, and so for me, it was quite easy to follow all of that because I understood the stakes of what was going on.
So that's great, and so I'm cautious to knock the movie on just me having comprehension problems and not just, to me it's like I don't really understand why you need this, because the first act and the third act feel like a complete movie to me. I don't like, other than maybe a few relationships that need to be fleshed out. My main problem with this movie is the de-aging. I've come to realize that. I think it looks shit. I don't think it's there at all. I think it looks really bad. And I think it's the worst major film CGI of the year, because while Cats, well, I'm glad you asked. Cats is objectively worse, but that is the world of the film. Like you are immediately you're opening a picture book to these two bright colors and shoddily faces pasted on CGI bodies. That's the world of the film. The world of The Irishman is supposed to be grounded and realistic, and the CGI took me straight out of the world of that film.
I think it should be acknowledged that you have a sixth sense for bad de-aging for some reason.
For sure, but other people have talked about this as well.
Yeah, but I on the other hand, it's not perfect, but it's good enough that
I was willing to accept it.
Yeah, I was willing
as the terms of having those actors.
This is one of the tools they needed to use to tell the story, and everything else around it is so beautiful that
I don't know if it would have been better to get younger actors or what they could have done, but like the Robert De Niro at his youngest, they've made his eyes so fucking piercing, and I was like, what are you doing? Why are his eyes so bright? It's so weird, man. And he moves like an old man, and they all move like old men, and their performances are incredible, but that took me out of it.
Yeah, so Marriage Story, the other big Netflix release. This is one, I put this in my top 10 for the end of the year. I'm really interested about this. I'm really interested in this movie because there's the scene in it, obviously, that everyone's talking about, with the big argument scene, which is fantastic. Both of the actors in this film are incredible. But I think this film suffered greatly by being released on Netflix, because whereas The Irishman is something you see a 3.5 hour runtime, and your average person doesn't want to watch that, whereas your average person sees a just shy or around about 2 hour runtime. They see Adam Driver, they see Scarlett Johansson, and they go, oh yeah, fuck yeah, I'll chuck this on. This seems like it'll be a good movie. This isn't To All the Boys I've Loved Before. It's not The Kissing Booth. It's like, it's a Noah Baumbach. I don't actually know how to say his last name. I've never had to say it out loud until now. It's
a full-on drama.
It's a full-on drama. It's an indie film. It's a character piece. It's not very. It's pretty depressing.
It's trying to say stuff.
But now, and it's all these things that this would have got a tiny cinema release. Barely anyone would have seen it. Those that would have praised it. But now,
until it got Oscar buzz, and then people would have.
And then people would go see it, and they understand it. Whereas now, anyone can fucking watch this movie. Anyone with a Netflix subscription can take a break from You Season 2 and watch Marriage Story. And so now it's getting people that are like, they're watching it on their phone, or they're on their phone while they're watching it on TV. And they go, you know what? I'm just some fucking nobody. And I think that yelling equals bad acting because I heard that somewhere. And it's like, no, this is actually... yelling. I've done an acting course. I did acting course for 2 years. People do think that yelling and crying are the two shortcuts to being a good actor. They're not, but that doesn't mean that they automatically make it bad acting.
When the characters in the script actually demand yelling and crying from you,
then
and that's the right time
when you've got
it.
Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson at their best performances they've ever done.
And when you care about the actors as well, the characters as much as you care about these two. Marriage Story, Wedding Story, Divorce Story more like, is my second highest rated film of the year. I fucking loved this film. I thought the performances were great. Everything that everyone has said that is good about it is good about it. It is that good, in my opinion. They are the best performances of the year, and I really hope they take home the acting Oscars for this.
It's really interesting. I watched this movie after you guys watched it, and I heard both of you loved it. And I, for some reason, the attitude I was in at the time or whatever, like, I didn't love it as much as you guys did, and I was kind of like, Like, I was a little bit cynical about the film and about the characters. I went back and watched it a second time because I was just like, I went back because I was just like, you guys really love this movie, and I feel like I didn't, because I I came to the movie after the whole Twitter sort of, there was this weekend on Twitter where everyone in America
was memeing
the movie and stuff like that. And I was just like, okay, I'll watch it. And so I came to it, but then I watched it again with the view to not watching the movie, but almost like consuming the performances.
Yeah.
And oh man, it was cool. I loved it. On second watch, I absolutely loved it. And on second watch, I felt the tragedy of it more. Whereas the first time I watched it, I really felt like, oh my gosh, these people just need therapy. Like, and honestly, these are both just two very emotionally immature people who don't know how to make a relationship work, and the movie's trying to make me care about it. I think when you go into this movie not thinking that this is a marriage story to like a sort of a meta story about marriage, but just a character study of these two people who are in a tragic situation, I think it's much better for you.
Yeah, so Jojo Rabbit, Taika Waititi's latest film.
Loved it.
It's good.
It's real good.
It's real good.
Yeah, I put this is my top 10. This is my favorite Taika Waititi film. I think that the reason it had kind of a middling critical response was because people were confused by, they thought they needed to be offended by it, where it's actually a very anti what people think it's pro.
Yeah,
movie.
I think there's still a lot of people that are like, you can't joke about Hitler.
Well, and I was just listening to a review of this because I wanted to understand why sort of reputable critics do not like this movie as much as they do. And their criticism, which I think there is some legs to, is that Taika Waititi is making a film about Nazis, about the horrors of anti-Semitism and racism and all that sort of stuff, but he doesn't show any of the bad. Other than the death of Scarlett Johansson, which hit me like a ton of bricks in the chest. I did
one of the best moments of film of the year. Yeah.
Oh, honestly, I was just like, and the way that it's introduced with their shoes, it's just like, and you don't even realize how much he's focusing on the shoes until it's masterful.
That's filmmaking. That's
totally.
filmmaking.
It was absolutely incredible. It was the red coat, like it's honestly, it's so good. But the thing is, people are saying, that he's playing off the horrors of the Holocaust, and he's showing like Stephen Merchant being a jokey, laughy Gestapo officer and stuff like that. And I'm like, the thing is that this film comes in the context of like 2 decades of films about the horrors of the Holocaust. There's been the Boy in the Striped
comes
Pajamas.
in the middle of the resurgence of actual Nazis.
Yeah, no, and so the thing is, what this film is saying, it's not. I don't think this film knows it's coming in the context of Schindler's List and The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Everyone has had a chance to watch movies about how awful the Holocaust is, and this film is one of the only ones that shows like what it could be from the perspective. And again, it's that empathy thing. Like it's
about humanity.
It shows the empathy. It gives you empathy for people who are growing up in a situation where they're taught how to hate. And it's giving you a way of reframing that and saying, this is why you shouldn't hate, even if you've been taught how to. And it's not doing the job of saying how bad the Holocaust was. It expects you to know that.
It's doing a job of showing how stupid Nazism is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's showing, it's making fun of it. The amount of times they say Heil Hitler over and over again, uninterrupted in this film in a row, that does that thing where it stops sounding like a real word, and that I think is this movie in a microcosm. It makes being a Nazi. It shows how silly being a Nazi is, which is more indicting than anything else you could say.
And it's about how silly hate and prejudice is, if you think about it, using the eyes of a child. And also, like, this film is fucking serious as hell. Like, it's a classic. And I think people that only know Taika from What We Do in the Shadows and Thor Ragnarok, which is his kind of big introduction to the US market, don't see that like Boy and Hunt for the Wilder People. Actually, these really they're not really serious films, but they have this really heartfelt message, which is, I think, is the genius of Taika Waititi that doesn't come across as much in something like Thor Ragnarok. Even the people say it does, but it doesn't really. And also, I just want to give a shout out to Sam Rockwell. What a fucking oh my god,
so
he's
good.
The king of amazing character arcs for despicable characters.
Well,
Yeah,
I think
I did not expect to feel sad when he died in this movie, but he's such a fucking hero at the end when he rips the coat off JoJo and spits at him. I was like, oh my god, it's so fucking sad. I need to watch this movie again. I loved it, man. I loved it so much.
I think that was the one other thing I was going to say about this movie is I think what's really beautiful is it shows how the terror of an ideology like that can actually hold people captive within it. So Sam Rockwell's character, and Alfie Allen's character, they are hated within this ideology, but they are almost forced to kind of. It shows like not everyone's courageous, not everyone has the bravery and the kind of like some people are a little bit cowardly and like just stay within it because they don't know how else to be. And so you see nuance in evil and the fact that people are just human, right? And so some people who are humans get caught up in this kind of stuff and they don't know how to get out of it. And I think that that's a really important message as well.
Yeah. So
can we rattle off a few obligatory mentions that I don't have much to say about?
I was just going to say, Jojo Rabbit's one of those ones. It's in my top. It wasn't in my top 10, but it's like it probably should be, and it could easily sub out any other film. The last film, sorry, just before we did it, we talked about on the podcast last year was Guns Akimbo, which didn't end up coming out this year, but I did get a chance to see, and it's not very good. Yeah, what are some big ones that you don't have much to say about?
I feel like we need to mention Dolomite Is My Name, really good. I don't have much to say about it. Yeah. We've already talked about Klaus and other podcasts, so you go listen to that. And Astra has lessened on me over time. I know you didn't like it, Jeremy.
I absolutely hated this movie. It was like, it purported to be this massive like emotional journey, and all it was a guy figuring out that he needed to talk to his wife more in order to be a human.
Yeah, and stop me if you want to stop and talk about these. Dr. Sleep, like Zombieland Double Tap, I thought it was going to be fucking shit, and it was great. Dr. Sleep's great. I'd recommend Dr. Sleep.
Yeah, that's another one I didn't get to see.
It's less prestigious as The Shining. It's more like a real good FX drama. It feels like a TV show more than a movie, but it's really good. The Peanut Butter Falcon is really good as well. For a while, that was in my top 10. But it just got pushed out. The Lighthouse is crazy and as manic and as wonderful as it looks.
I wasn't a big fan of it though.
The performances.
The Lighthouse was one that I got told all year was like, this is the best film of the year, and they watched it and I was like, It was this year's Hereditary. Speaking of this year's Hereditary.
Totally. I just want to say that Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson are fucking awesome in The Lighthouse. I really love them.
Yeah,
Hereditary. Midsommar?
Yeah, Midsommar. Fuck, man. So, Hereditary, again, was it last year it came out? I had a whole year of people telling me, like, and I really didn't want to see it because I'm not a big horror person, but I had a whole year of people telling me this is the best film of 2018. And they watched and I was like, that was it? Like, that's what everyone was going on about? Sure, Tony Collette's incredible, whatever. But then I heard the similar things about Midsommar. It's actually really good. And I was like, oh, whatever. And then I think I just won free tickets to it. So we're like, okay, fuck it. We'll go. So it's like 3 weeks after it came out, and holy fuck, I was blown away by this film. This is incredible. I did not expect to love this film as much as I did. This could have been 30 hours long, and I would have been captivated the whole time. This was, I fell in love with this movie. Florence Pugh needs to be the biggest star in the world. She's incredible.
Yeah.
And from the first 45 minutes of Little Woman, she was great in that as well. But oh my god, Midsommar, man, what a fucking ride. This was so good.
I agree with you until the end.
That it was good?
Yeah, like I agree that the movie was an amazing ride, but where the ride finished really spoiled the movie for me.
Interesting.
I felt like, and this is what I've heard. I haven't seen Hereditary, but this is what I've heard about Hereditary as well. Is that it introduces this fascinating concept and all this sort of stuff, and then it's almost like what's his name? Who's the director?
Ari Aster.
Yeah, that he has this where he knows so well how to create mood, how to create tone, how to create nuance, and
how to get like just the most blood curdling screams out of people.
Yeah, totally. And how to like really make you feel incredibly uncomfortable and like all this sort of stuff, whilst showing you the most beautifully shot, like wonderful scenes, like all this sort of stuff. Like this is what I found amazing about Midsommar, is it basically turns all the horror tropes on their head because it's shot in the brightest sunlight with the most beautiful surroundings and all this sort of stuff. And he managed to create the most creepy vibes out of that, which I think is masterful.
Yeah.
The issue is I just don't think he has anything to say. And so Midsommar, I was so excited, like, what is this movie saying? Like, what is so horror as a genre is at its best when it's saying something about us, about culture, about humanity, about our relationships with one another. And Midsommar, I was like, man, this is so interesting. Like, wow, what has this got to say? And the ending is going to reveal what he kind of his thesis statement. And it just didn't. Like, he was just satisfied with creeping us out and going, how fucking weird are these people?
This movie is about how to recognize you're in a toxic relationship and knowing when to cut it off. That's what this movie's about.
It's a breakup movie.
Yeah.
This is the breakup movie of the year. I'm sorry, Marriage Story.
What I loved about Midsommar is that it's so terrifying and creepy and real visceral horror movie ways, but then it's also terrifying in the ways where it's like, hey, what if you were the only one in your friend group that nobody actually liked? Oh my god, terrifying. Like, that is terrifying. That's the real
it's
terror.
more, like, if you're like me, you're not really a horror person. Aside from, like, a couple of moments of, like, gore, it's not really like a horror movie. It's just real stressful.
Yeah.
Like, it's... Yeah, I was just stressed out.
Speaking of stressful, can we briefly touch on Uncut Gems? Fantastic film. Adam Sandler is a tour de fucking force in this movie.
That comes out on Netflix in New Zealand at the end of January.
So check that out. It is fucking insane.
I couldn't watch past the first 15 minutes because I found it too stressful. I was like, I can't handle this much talking and noise.
Yeah.
A glowing recommendation.
So there's only like 2 big movies I feel like we need to talk about. One of which is El Camino, the Breaking Bad film. But
what else is there to say? It shouldn't have been as good as it was. It shouldn't have even existed, and it does exist, and it's really good.
Okay, but now, because Jeremy has to leave very soon, and we've been excited to talk about this film, we've got 5 minutes to talk about it.
Wait.
Parasite, best film of the year.
Not my number one pick, but the best film of the year. Absolutely.
Yeah, same. I Endgame feels disingenuous to not put as my number one film of the year, but holy fuck, Parasite is the best film of the year. Jeremy, why do you disagree?
No, I want to hear more about what you love about the movie, because I do not think this is a bad movie in any way. This is a very, very well made movie, and I would not mind if it won Best Picture. It is just in every aspect. It's beautifully shot. All the performances are brilliant. For me, okay, I will tell you why. I don't put this higher.
Yeah.
There is no goodness in this movie. There is no good character. Not a single person in this film is and it's interesting because because of where I'm at in life at the moment. I have just had a baby. I lose patience with films that just seek to critique every single aspect of every character, or there is. I want films that are introducing goodness or showing not just critiquing what's bad, but also showing what is the right way to live, or showing what is good and what should be done in such a situation. And I feel like this movie is just burn it all down. When you finish this film, it's just everything's fucked and it's making everyone fucked.
Yeah, but I think that's an important thing in the film, is because it's about how, because I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, the rich family did nothing wrong, and so why are they the victims of all this?
Incorrect.
But then it's the whole class system and all the stuff is that it's this genuinely, I guess, kind of evil family that are overtaking this family, but there's evil on both sides of them.
Yeah, and essentially you're not viewing the characters necessarily just as individual people. You're seeing them as avatars and metaphors for the placement in society.
That's what I wanted to say, is that this is a movie about class structure, and so class abuse becomes the number one sin of the movie. So the poor family they might be kind of uncouth, but I love them. They are my family, whereas the upper class family are rich and arrogant and dismissive and fetishize being poor in a way that's really, really damaging. And so this exists in a world where being classist is the worst sin of all, and everything else takes a backseat to that.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with any of that, and I totally understand what the movie's doing and where it's going. I just would never, ever want to watch this movie again, because I didn't enjoy it. I had to watch this movie.
I love movies like that.
I had to watch this movie in 3 parts just because I did not, I just didn't like anyone.
I also just think Bong Joon-ho is such an interesting director. And the other thing about this movie, it's so funny. And it's all of his films, especially Okja, on Netflix, they're so funny. They're Jake Gyllenhaal's performance in Okja is does he realize he's not in a cartoon? And I think he doesn't he does a really good job of not sort of talking down to the audience when it comes to the Koreanisms in the film. There's a lot.
Presents it as it is.
Yeah, he's making the film he wanted to make. He's not tailoring it for an English speaking audience, but
it's
at the same
for
time,
the wilder people.
yeah, he's not he's not excluding them in any way. And there was a really interesting thread on Reddit that was like, what are some references and jokes that we might not have gotten in that, and if you could find it, like have a read through, because there's so many just jokes in that take on a whole new meaning. There's a thing about like he opens the father mentions opening a cake shop, which is like so many people in South Korea have lost their fortunes opening cake shops. It's like a joke like that. And there's another thing, there's a scene where the son is teaching his dad how to act, and he's like, and Bong Joon-ho says that that scene's quite funny for Korean audiences because that's like having a scene of Ansel Elgort teaching Al Pacino how to act because that's those people's status in South Korea.
The thing I want to say about this film is like the moment that made me go like because there were again, I feel like I'm constantly having to defend myself for not placing this higher when I do actually like a lot about it.
Yeah.
The moment that made me go, and I feel like it's not a surprise, is the torrential downpour of rain when everything falls apart and they have to go home, and they and literally they go from the top of the city
to wading through shit.
to wading through shit in their underground. Like just that
Fuck,
physical.
it's a good movie.
That physical representation, like as a filmmaker, to conceive of like that just visually, and not even just visually, but like placement, and the daughter just actually just going like, you know whatever, what the fuck, I'm just gonna sit on top of this toilet as it spews out shit. And it's just this deep like, it's so concerning, but it's
so
also
powerful.
funny. And the fact that it's funny is also concerning. The fact that like this image of her just like kind of crying when she's on the toilet and it's like spewing out shit. Like it's such a visceral reminder to you of the placement of where these people are in society just by mere virtue of the fact that they don't have money. And I think that it's so good at what it does. So I completely agree with you, but I can't say I enjoyed it that much.
Well, you're right.
If the Academy really wanted people to think they're woke, this would get Best Picture.
Yes. So that's what I was saying before, is that like I feel like Best Picture is between this, Marriage Story, Irishman, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood only sneaking in there as a safe Academy choice, but it's between those three.
All right. So that's it. Okay, guys, what was your favorite movie of the year? Everyone want to go around and say that?
Endgame was my most enjoyable, but Parasite was the best.
My favorite movie from what I think is the best and most enjoyable is Knives Out as well.
Yeah, I agree. And guys, Richard and Jeremy and me, AJ, what was the most disappointing film of the year? Everyone say it on 3. 1, 2, 3. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker.
The worst movie I watched this year, just for the record, is there's a documentary on Netflix called Enter the Anime, and it's one of the worst fucking things I've ever seen. So that's 2019. And
we'll be back next week with the most anticipated films of 2020.
Is that what we're calling it? Didn't you want to change the name, AJ?
Yeah, I want to change it to the dumbest looking films of 2020 to give it
controversial.
a symmetry with the most disappointing films. But
then if we say this one looks real dumb, then we're not going to be disappointed by it. I feel like you need the anticipation. Anyway, this is a conversation.
Yeah, maybe you do.
Pod.
That's a good point. Well, we'll have figured it out by next week.
Yeah.
All right, here I am back at the end with a little outro. For you, it's been nearly an hour and a half. For me, it's been but 4 seconds. And here it is. Here's the outro, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Listening, I should say. But if you did want to watch me and watch us, then you can find links to videos that we discussed in this episode in the show notes below, such as the Star Wars Rise of Skywalker debrief, or the Knives Out video, which at the time of recording this episode I hadn't fully made yet, but I've made it now and it's out and you can watch it, and you should, and I'm really proud of it. If you liked this podcast and you like those videos, then please do not hesitate to subscribe to Cold Popture on YouTube, to follow us on Facebook, like us on Facebook. Fuck, I'm all over the place. You can follow us on Twitter though, and Instagram, and you can also donate to our Patreon www.patreon.com/cultpopture, or you can join our Discord. All of these there are so many links in the show notes these days, so follow all of the links in the show notes and do the appropriate response, whether that be following, liking, subscribing, or just enjoying, just having a good time. But that's it for this week, guys. Or is it? Because maybe, just maybe, we have a new segment called Post-Credit Scene. So if you stick around until just after this outro music finishes, then there'll be a little surprise.
All right. Thank you for listening to that episode of the Cult Popture podcast. What a fun one that was to record.
It sure was.
Yeah. So, this is our post-credit scene, our second one for the year. And if you want to get in on these, if you want to send us a challenge or a question or whatever that we can do in one of these, you've got to join our Patreon. Sorry, you have to do it.
www.patreon.com/cultpopture.
Yep.
And today's post-credit scene comes to us from Brent Taylor, long-time listener of the show, and he asks, what's the best movie with the worst sequel, or what's the biggest drop-off between a movie and its sequel, biggest quality drop-off? Now, I think you could take half a dozen Star Wars movies and apply
Rise of Skywalker.
a bunch of them to these.
Yeah.
I've always been, and we've yet to cover this show on the podcast, this franchise on the podcast, but I've always been dumbfounded at how bad Pirates of the Caribbean has been at making a good sequel, because the first one's so good, and I just don't think it would be that hard to make a good sequel to Pirates of the Caribbean, but they haven't done it. I'm sure there are examples of movies where the sequel is much worse than any of the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels, but those are the two that come to mind.
because there's a lot of movies Mean Girls has Mean Girls 2, Legally Blondes to Legally Blonde.
Oh my god.
There's so many films in that kind of straight to DVD genre that it's you can pick almost any of those. I mean, of the ones I've seen, Mean Girls 2 was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Compared to Mean Girls 1, which is a fantastic film.
Agreed.